Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jess, and today I'm going to show you step by step how to make simmering granules, or sometimes they're called salt sizzlers. I'm going to show you a step-by-step recipe how I make mine with ratios and everything broken down, and then in part 2 I'm going to show you how to color them. So stay tuned and enjoy this video. Let's talk supplies now. What are you going to need to make your salt sizzlers? Get some beakers, one for measuring out the salt, or a bowl would work as well. Just make sure that whatever you choose fits on top of your scale. And you're going to need another small container to measure out your fragrance oil. You're going to need your fragrance oil, something to open up. See, this one has a dropper cap, so I have my little opener here. A stir stick or a spoon would work as well. I'll get to that example in a minute. You're going to need your Pink Himalayan salt. This is coarse. If you need a calculator, grab yourself a calculator and a notepad and a pen to calculate the ratios or to make any notes. So let's get to it. Let's begin by calculating our formula that we're going to need and the appropriate ratios. Now, I used a 20% ratio to make this batch, and I concluded that it had too much fragrance oil in it. I didn't like, there's a puddle of liquid at the bottom here, and I didn't like how many salt granules were dissolving in the fragrance oil. So a 20% formula is too much fragrance oil, so let's do a 10% one. I think cutting that completely in half would work really well. So we're going to do 90% salt to 10% fragrance oil or essential oil as well. That would be fine, and we want our formula to equal 100%. So whatever units you use, whether you use grams or ounces or whatever your preferred unit is, make sure that your formula adds up to 100%. Now, I'm not going to do this by mils because it's inaccurate. You want to make sure that with your formulas you can just throw it on a scale and do the same thing over and over again. That's why we're going to use grams or ounces or something like that. We don't want to use millimeters because it's too inaccurate. Like if I was to say to you, this is like what, 75 mils? Do you see that? It's just too hard to tell. You don't know what's going on. So I'm going to do a 100 gram batch. So I'm going to start it with 90 grams of salt to 10 grams of fragrance oil, and I just put FO for fragrance oil, and I want it to equal 100 grams. This is the best way to know that, so that if you were ever to add anything, you can manipulate your formula and it always adds up to 100. This is a really good practice to get into with your candles or skincare products or anything like that, is to use a proper formula. Now, if you were to use ounces, 90 ounces I think is a lot. So you could cut this. You could cut this in half and still be accurate. Like if you wanted to do like 45 ounces to, let's just keep the numbers the same, 5 ounces, and then that would equal 50 ounces. Like, I really don't know ounces, so that might be a crazy example, but you kind of see what I'm saying. It's still consistent. It's just a half batch, and I can do the same thing. Like if I wanted to do 45 grams of salt to 5 grams of fragrance oil, then I would have a 50 gram batch, and it would still equal like 100. It's a half batch. It's smaller. Or if I wanted to double this, I would do 180 grams. Yep, that's right. Plus 20 grams of, 180 grams of salt plus 20 grams of fragrance oil, and then I would get a 200 gram batch. So it would just double it. So just for this example, we're just going to stick right here where I'm going to measure out with you 90 grams of salt and 10 grams of fragrance oil to get a 100 gram batch. So let's do this now. Let's actually get the salt out and measure it and make it together. Okay, put your beaker on your scale. Let's turn the scale on. Make sure it's tared to 0. Make sure that you have the right units that you're using. I'm using grams. Get your Himalayan salts and let's measure out 90 grams. Go slow as you're going near the number so that you measure correctly the first time. Okay, I did too fast there. Let's try again. Okay, that's pretty accurate. It's literally like one granule that made it jump a little bit more. Okay, we've got 90 grams in here. Just put it aside and let's get our small beaker now. And get our fragrance oil. Make sure that we're tearing it to 0 and pouring in our fragrance oil. So one of these little sample bottles makes just about 10 grams perfectly. So that's just the tiny little one there. But if you're going to make a bigger batch, you're definitely going to need more fragrance oil than this for it. Alright, turning our scale off and putting it aside, getting our salts and our fragrance oil, and now we're going to mix them together. So I'm going to take half of this fragrance oil, I'm going to pour it in here, and then I'm going to mix it. And then I'm going to take the other half of what's left, pour it in, and continue mixing. There, this is, the 10% is a much better consistency than the 20%. I don't have the pooling. I'm just checking the liquid at the bottom. You can see how it's pretty good. You could, if you are not happy with this 20%, 10% fragrance load, if you think it's too much, there is a bit of, I'm trying to show you here, get the camera to focus. Down here. There is a bit at the bottom, but I also want my customers to have a strong fragrance, and as we mix it will incorporate. So I would sell it at 10%, and I definitely wouldn't use the 20% fragrance load. It's way too much. It's just a waste, really. Yeah, there's way too much liquid in there. You can see that there. All this pooling liquid, it's too much. 10% is a good fragrance load to use, in my opinion. If you think that it's too much, then you just go down with your formula. You just simply go back to your formula here, and instead of a 10% fragrance oil, you can chop that back to 7% or whatever you like, and then this would just go up to 93%. And then you would get a 100%. So instead of 90 grams of salt, you would just pop that up to 93 and 7 grams of fragrance oil, and it would still equal 100. So you can play with these ratios. I'm just showing you what I've made and what I would use to sell this with. Now, and you make your own determination on what you deem is appropriate for your products. Now, make sure that when you're packaging this now, you use an oil sealed bag. Like the bags that you choose are like liquid proof. What I mean is that you'll want something that's like a plastic coated rather than just a craft bag, because this will just leak through, just like how I've got marks here on the paper from the bottoms of the beakers and stuff just spilling a little bit or being a bit damp. The same thing that will happen to your packaging, and then it will get to the customer and it'll be just like a soggy wet mess and they won't like it and they'll complain, and you don't want that. So choose appropriate packaging. There are some ones that you can seek out that are compostable and things like that, such as these types of bags, and this is like what I would use. They're made of plant cellulose, and they're a lot more earth friendly because they're completely home compostable, versus something like this that would have to be put into a soft plastic recycling, and that's really up to the customer, so if they're earth conscious or not. So I like to be earth conscious as a creator and choose home compostable plant cellulose bags. And a really good way to tell is that these ones don't have an adhesive at the top. Usually if you get like the cellulose bags and they have an adhesive, they're not made of plant cellulose. They're not compostable. They're just made of regular plastic. So I'm going to do a part 2 video on how to color these. So I'll put the link in the description of this video, or you can just click at the little box that will show up on the screen. I hope this video was helpful for you and you go make your own salt sizzlers, and give this video a like if it was great, and leave any questions below and I'll be happy to answer them for you. Happy creating!